The arc light, extending from the past to the present, connecting all. In the beginning, we mistook it for a force of nature, for a common thing, like the light of stars or moons. Little did we know back then the truth. The arc is alive. Perhaps more alive than beings like us can comprehend, and the light is its heart. The arc birthed us. It molded us. It took us from the people we once were and turned us into travelers. The nature of a traveler is to maintain and guide the arc as it expands across the worlds. The arc's influence spread throughout the universe, planting seeds. We do not know its true purpose, but from what we have observed, the most primal call of the arc is the creation of life. The arc manipulates organic structures as casually as you or I might breathe. The arc light is power, and power demands to be used. For the travelers, there was no greater calling than the arc. It was all that there was. Elle stood vigil at the Aurora Gate. She waited for Asaya, the traveler of Aurelia, to return. Recently, Asaya had sent word via the followers that her scholars had discovered how to extend the reach of the arc. Elle considered what it would be like, an existence where the arc extended to all, could be felt everywhere, all worlds at all gates flowing endlessly as one. It would be amazing. A traveler, from their inception, learned to read and react to arc light. It changed them as they shaped it. Elle had always stood at a crossroad. She was mistress of the in-between. The arc light could flower on multiple worlds thanks to her gift. Like all the greater travelers, she had sacrificed much for the gift of travel, including the ability to create life of her own within her body. But what was that cost compared to being the captain to all who traveled the Ark Worlds? Elle's attention was suddenly alerted to a person in the room with her that she had not noticed. Tarpa, her companion for over 1,000 years, stood watching her. His eyes looked through her, his face speaking volumes, though he had not spoken yet. "I did not see you enter," Elle told him. "Was there something you needed?" "Elle," Tarpa said, "do you remember the time when we first mated and were led to the Mother Lake?" Elle's expression softened. "We haven't spoken of these times in ages. They're a distant memory. Why do you recall these things?" "I remember. Back then, we used to dream of raising a family together. We were going to name our second-born after my first father. Do you remember that?" "We haven't spoken of these times in ages, Tarpa," she repeats. Confused, she asks, "Why are you bringing these up again? I don't like it." "Beloved, I'm sorry," Tarpa says sympathetically. "My intentions are not to harm you, but only to make you remember, to recall those times when we used to live only one life on only one world, before the Ark found us and consumed us, before we became travelers of the Ark Worlds. Do you remember how, when we climbed Kualata Mountains and looked out, we thought that we were looking at the edge of the world? Do you remember how big small things like worlds looked to us back then? Do you—" "Stop it, Tarpa," Elle demanded. "I do not like it when you speak to me like this. I do not like when you try to use your words to get the better of my judgment. What are you getting at, Tarpa? Yes, I remember those days. I remember those days and every day since with perfect clarity. You know this." "I'm sorry," Tarpa says again. "Are you?" Elle says in accusation. Silence stands between them. Tarpa sighs heavily. He has made a choice. "Elle, I need you to leave with me. I need the Elle who not only remembers those days, but longs for those days. I need you to come with me. I don't need Elle, traveler of the in-between. I need Elle, whose mother came from the northern land, and whose father was a farmer of Bada root, to remember and to leave this place with me." Elle was confused. "Leave? Why? What do you mean leave?" Elle asked. "I mean, collect all that is yours, exit the Ark Gate, and never return," Tarpa snapped, frustrated. "I mean leave, as in forever, as in for good." "Tarpa, I'm having trouble Leave. Tarpa, why are you asking me to leave the Ark? The Ark is all." The Ark! The Ark!" Tarpa's voice raised almost to the point of yelling. "That is the problem, Elle. This Ark." Tarpa spoke with a mix of passion and pain. He spoke with 1,000 years of things that had been better left unsaid. "It has changed us. It has shaped us in its image. It has stolen our bodies, replacing them with these bodies which aren't recognizable as what they once were. It has taken my farmer's hands and replaced them. The eyes and nose and mouth of my father are no longer with me, El. I have forgotten my own face, El. I can remember it no longer. They tell us the Ark is all. That's what they say. Do you know who told us that, El? The Ark. Back when our people were wretched and on the brink of extinction, it whispered to us. Dripped venomous lies into the ears and mouths of the desperate and dying people. It told us it would be our salvation, Tarpa sneered, when it was the very thing poisoning the land, drinking from her womb until she was barren and no longer able to support life. And then, when we gathered in the last place where life had not extinguished, when our numbers were but in the hundreds, it spoke to us, and it told lies. Tarpa punctuated every word with spite. Tarpa, El said, I will not listen to this any longer. What would you have had us to do, Tarpa? What would you have had us do? We were dying. Many of us had already died. My father, my mother, our child. They were all claimed in those times. Do you just honor their memory? Have you forgotten the oaths of your father so quickly, Tarpa? The Ark gave us life. It showed us the universe. It granted us knowledge and made us aware. All that it asks in return is that we tend to it and use its gifts to create life. All it wants is for everything to share in its joy. That's it, Tarpa. It used its power to grant us life and restore our bodies. That is why the Ark is all. Leave me, and do not return until your senses have returned to you. There will be no returning, Tarpa said. Elle's breath caught in her throat. Each heartbeat punctuated in her chest as she asked the question that, to her core, she knew she did not want the answer to. Tarpa, what have you done? It was the longest moment before Tarpa spoke again. As traveler, it has been my duty to attend to the health and well-being of the Ark. You know this. What you do not know is that I have betrayed that duty. I have been actively searching for a way to break free of the Ark's control for all this time. Since forever ago, I have had a hidden world, a secret place for me to study the essence of the Ark light, its heart. This is my prime world. I figured it out, El. I figured out the Ark light. I understand it and how it works and how to stop it. El, when Asaya returns, she will have with her a carrier. This carrier will bond to anything of the Ark light. It will phase shift the Ark light into a subspatial dimension, robbing its ability to operate. The phase fires will spread throughout everything that touches the Arc Light and render it inert. Everything of Arc Light will cease to be biological anymore, and we will be free of the oppression of the Arc Light. Please, just come with me. Leave this place before it is too late. Asaya will be arriving soon. I cannot, Elle says aghast, unable to process what she has just heard all at once. I will not, she says. I will not, Tarpa. These vows are sacred. These duties we hold are sacred. To be a traveler is to be chosen, blessed by the Ark itself. I cannot go against that. I cannot do this thing that you have asked. Is this true? Asaya, I must warn her. It's too late, Tarpa screamed. It is well past the hour that Asaya has entered the gate. She will be here any minute. Don't you see? This is happening, Elle. This is real. Come with me, Elle, before it's too late. A whirring sound emanates from the Ark. Flower-like petals bloom from a pool of molten silver, stretching up twisted and then unfurling like a flower in bloom. Then a light appears, at first a prick, then expanding suddenly until it becomes a solid portal of light. It doesn't just give off light. Somehow it is made of light. It is light given shape and form. The Ark bends space-time in ways unlike anywhere else in the universe. A figure starts to emerge like an angel descending a stairway from heaven. It gets to the edge, somehow unable to pass through the membrane. At first, it is confused, wondering what has gone wrong, but slowly, confusion gives way to fear. Fear to panic, panic to pain, and pain to agony. It rises and fires like the heart of a sun unable to escape its prison. It reaches out, just barely able to pierce the veil. But the entire Ark begins to quake. The molten silver shakes and bubbles violently. It rises up, consuming itself, burning itself, ripping itself asunder. The Ark is no longer able to sustain itself, to hold itself together. The edges of the hard light start to lose their brilliance, calcifying and turning to stone. "Elle, we must leave! We cannot wait any longer!" Tarpa screams to her. "I cannot, Tarpa! The Ark is life! I must save it! Tarpa, we will never forgive you for what you have tried to do here today! The Ark is everything, Tarpa! It is all that we have!" "It was all that you had!" Tarpa screamed. "I tried to be more for you, Elle. I tried to be, if you would let me, but it was never enough, Elle. I was never enough. Elle, I just wanted to go back to how it was. I just wanted to be free again. Elle! Elle!" But she could not hear him. She was too far lost. The sound of the Ark gate collapsing was too great. The entire room shook with the force as all that was light in the vicinity of the portal was corrupted and changed. Tarpa looked down at his own body, the skin across his arms starting to calcify and scar. He had no choice. He fled. Elle ran up to the Ark gate. Seeing the life slip out of it, she watched as the Ark collapsed in on itself, unable to sustain itself without light. She placed strong, firm hands along the collapsing edge. She fought against it with all her might. She gave everything she had to the Ark, but still, it was not enough. She pulled against the collapsing edge of the portal with all that she was. She screamed and strained against the force, tendons tearing and bones compressing against the weight, but it was not enough. Finally, seeing that she would not be able to stop the collapse, she reached inside the portal until her hands touched the heart of the Ark, the light. She held it, comforted it. She closed her hands around it, giving it a place to hide. She protected it, folded it in between her two hands as the portal collapsed and engulfed her arms. As it did, it drained her of her light. It removed her life force. It made her inorganic. In that moment, she ceased to be alive. She turned from flesh and blood into lifeless compounds: carbon, sodium, sulfur, copper, iron, zinc, and gold. Her last thought as her life force left her body, she wondered if it would be enough, if her actions would have been able to save some small facet of the Ark to live on in the future. Elle perished, having never learned the answer to her question. Forever from now, and a long time forward. The Ark Emperor entered the room taken aback by the scale. Over the last 8 years, he had conquered 9 kingdoms, established 30 territories, and personally sat on 5 thrones, and still the majesty of the space struck him. This was a place of power and life. The walls thrummed with the subsonic frequencies of an energy long forgotten, a heartbeat, a pulse. During some forgotten time, this would have been a place of meeting, a hub for travelers from all over the Ark Worlds. Now it was a tomb. It preserved the remnants of a long-forgotten civilization, like a window into the past, so distant it was a fairy tale. "Rain," the Arch-Emperor spoke to his second command, the Black King Rain. "Do you know the significance of this place?" Rain stood at attention. In his armor, he was a menacing figure, nearly 8 feet tall. Rain's Ark armor was a full suit, unlike almost anything that anyone had ever been able to craft before. The armor left almost no space between the plates, holding as much light within its walls as possible, all being pumped into Rain at almost all times. It fed him, enhanced him, and gave him the strength of 10 men. They say that getting hit by the Black King was equivalent to getting kicked in the chest by 3 horses. Those that survived the experience did not cross the Black King again. Few had ever seen the man outside his armor. Drunken men told tavern stories which claimed the Black King would die if he were forced to bare his true face. Some say that he was the ghost of an era long forgotten, and that ghost of a man had been resurrected as a living demon. Some say. Behind Rain stood a platoon of royal guard. Each one, to the man, was as ruthless as a caged animal, and as loyal as a well-fed one. Though they wore no Ark armor, they were all trained in the arts of fighting a man who did. They were off until they were told to be on, and as such stood quietly at attention, their posture mimicking that of their commander, the Black King. Rain was not the type to be caught up in the motion of things. To him, a room was a room, and a tomb was just an old room. That said, even he couldn't deny the energy of the space. It was electrifying fingers that penetrated his armor, crawling slowly across his subconscious. The presence was undeniable.
"My lord has not seen it fit to disclose to me the importance of this place, my lord. It is not my place to ask questions."
"Of course," the Arch-Emperor responded with a slight nod of his head. The submission of the Black King was one of his biggest challenges to date. It still brought him pleasure to know that Rain had transitioned so thoroughly to his service. The armor of the Arch-Emperor was very different from that of his second-in-command. Where Rain wore an armor of tightly interlocking metal, Arch wore almost the exact opposite. Aside from the few points of contact that kept the sacred metals grounded to his spirit anchors, the forehead, the temples, the shoulders, and the back, his armor was almost completely open. So complete was his control over the arc light that the metal weavings would only get in the way of his power. At his level, Archer's control of the arc light was so powerful that he could wield it directly for both destruction of his enemies and the protection of his physical being. "My hand," the Arch-Emperor said, referring to Rain. "This is the location of the Ark of Aurora. The Ark is a power far older than anything we have ever known. It dates back to the very creation of this world. Not much is known about those who created this power. Their history is long lost to us. But consider this. The Ark technologies we use today are but a sliver of a shadow of their empire. All we are able to glean are table scraps by comparison." Arch approached the center of the room. At its center stood a statue. It was a figure of a woman, nearly 30 feet tall. Her build was strong and thick, with the build of a warrior. She looked compassionate, with hands extended into a giant stone ellipse, nearly twice her size and area. Arch approached the portal, now stone, or once it was living light. From his side, the portal was impossibly smooth, with not a single sign of deviation in thickness or surface texture. It was virtually clean, dust and other particulates finding no opportunity to bind to the surface. "What they have been misunderstanding this whole time," Arch said. "Scholars, scientists, philosophers, all of them. What they have not been able to grasp is that the Ark is not a force. It is not an unknowable constant of the universe. It is alive." The Arch-Emperor placed his hand against the surface. Closing his eyes, he reached within himself mentally. He reached past all the layers of metal weaving and arc armor. He reached past the years of tutelage and scholarship. He even reached past himself, reaching past the ego and identity. He reached past it all until he found the center. It was only then that he was able to realize that he was of the Arclight, and the Ark was all there was. Rain watched his emperor as a glow shone deep from inside of his body. It was like a pulsating light that originated at the emperor's center and then worked its way out until it spread in every direction to everywhere that was. It was like watching the manifestation of destiny and outcome realized. It was like seeing in real time the will of his emperor literally shaping the world around him, and as he pulsated, so too did the gate. Not much at first, just a flicker. At first, it was like the thought of an action, deciding if it should take shape. But then it grew. With each pulse, it became stronger, louder, more real, until suddenly, like a baby screaming its first breath, the gate came to life. While the rear remained as a statue of stone, the front of it shone like hard light shaped into a portal. The Ark sprang back into life, and at the same time, across hundreds of realities, gates in all the other Ark Worlds resonated for the first time and forever with a pulse. 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 Pulse.